future of aggregation is the name of this first session. So we're working in an increasingly complex market filled with a whole range of new entrants that is looking increasingly fragmented. So who's going to bring it together? So we're going to hear from a fascinating lineup of speakers, including Zone TV, Now TV, and Viaplay, before moving into the panel, finishing just prior to the coffee break at 10:30. So just prior to that, I'm going to do a bit of scene setting and subject you to a little bit of background to the market. So the background. The market has changed pretty fundamentally in terms of particularly the subscription market. So what we're looking at the moment is a view of Western Europe and North America and the numbers of contracts in the market. So in the blue at the bottom, we've got the pay TV contracts, and in the orange, we've got the new entrants, the subscription on-demand services, the Netflixes, the Amazons, the Now TVs of the world. So one thing that should be fairly obvious from this is that, well, firstly, pay TV is by no means dead. It's continued to grow. Although we've seen cord cutting in a few markets, actually the pay TV market is still adding new subscribers every year. So between 2010 and 2016, we've added another 10 million subscribers to that tally to reach about 222 million subscribers across the region. But of course, the big orange blob at the top is illustrating how rapidly this market is changing. 5 years ago, were we to have this conference, we'd be talking about these entrants as new, exciting. What's happening here? Whereas now they're cemented. There's 150 million subscriptions to the likes of Netflix, Amazon, and others in the market. By 2021, there will be more subscription OTT contracts than there will be pay TV services. So that is likely to happen actually over the next few years in the interim period. So very, very rapid change in this market. But these aren't new customers. These aren't new households that we're magically generating. These are the same people who are increasingly taking multiple services. So if we think about the ways in which consumers aggregate services themselves, we can see a marked shift over the last few years. So we've interviewed around about 53,000 internet users across Europe and North America to have a look at, well, what sorts of services do they have in their homes? Back in mid-2015, about half of households, half of internet users, were pay TV only. That was their primary and, in fact, only means of accessing TV. It was a cable or a satellite or an IPTV subscription. Just about a quarter of internet users added subscription video on demand to the mix. So they were taking pay TV plus a Netflix or an Amazon or another service. What you can hopefully see by the end of the first quarter in 2017 is that actually that is now in the minority. There are fewer pay TV only subscribers amongst internet users than there are those who are combining pay TV and subscription video on demand solutions. So a big shift in how consumers are actually consuming and watching and aggregating services in their home. Where is that happening? Well, in the US, obviously. So as of Q1 this year, about 61% of US internet users combined pay TV and subscription video on demand. We see big uptake of combined services in Denmark and Sweden, in the UK, and at the lower end, markets like Germany and France. But that's still a substantial number of households still taking this combination, self-built bundles in the most part. That's not the only thing happening. People are also stacking subscription video on demand services on top of one another. They're not just saying, well, I want a pay TV service and one subscription video on demand services. I want a pay TV service and an average of 2.6 subscription video on demand services. So if you take one subscription video on demand service, on average, you're likely to take just over another 1.5. So people are already aggregating not just pay TV with SVOD, but subscription services. They're taking Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and Now TV and all of those services together. And you can see that quite clearly in a number of markets. If we look at the US as a quick example for where subscription video on demand has really taken off, nearly 90% of Hulu customers also take Netflix. Nearly 2/3 of Hulu customers also take Amazon Prime Video. Half of Netflix subscribers also take Amazon Prime. So we can see there's very, very tight clustering. So people who are really into subscription video on demand want another service. So why is that? Well, it's all about exclusivity. It's about unique content. It's about what you can get from each of these services uniquely. So what we're showing here in this tree map is basically an illustration of the number of exclusive, unique titles that are available on these different services in the US, for instance. So Amazon, 27,000 exclusive titles that aren't available on other services. Netflix, 5,000 exclusive titles that aren't available on Amazon or Hulu. And you can start to see Hulu, Starz, HBO. Those non-exclusive titles, those that are shared between multiple services, represent just 2,000 titles out of that whole bucket. So if you want to access Netflix's content, obviously the only place you're going to get it is on Netflix, and likewise for Hulu, Starz, HBO. So you need to be stacking services. So what are we looking at? Well, potentially a bit of a positive feedback loop here. You take a subscription video on demand service because you want the content that it offers. You take it and you watch more online video. So nearly 70% of subscription video on demand customers in Western Europe and North America watch video on a connected device on a daily basis, perhaps unsurprising. But that means, of course, they're less likely to watch broadcast TV. They watch 16% less scheduled TV than average. Of course, if they're watching less scheduled TV, they're more likely to be thinking, well, do I really need this service? So they're 27% more likely to be considering churning from their pay TV service over the next 6 months. And of course, many of them follow through on that threat. So subscription video on demand homes are 32% more likely to have churned or switched their main TV service provider in the last 6 months. And that, of course, leads round again. You know, you run out of content on your pay TV service, you need another subscription video on demand service. So where does it stop? Well, or why does it stop? Price is one thing. You run out of money as a consumer. So why is that going to happen? If we look at this is basically a pricing waterfall. It's the various different services that are offered in the market and the price points that they're offered at. So if you take Netflix, it's quite cheap in the US. There are a few different tiers, but let's say you take the $10 tier. You think, well, I want Amazon with that, and I want Hulu, and I really like the Showtime content, and oh, you know what, I really like Game of Thrones, so I'm going to add HBO to the mix, and you know what, Starz and CBS All Access. By the time you've aggregated these 7 services, you've reached a monthly spend of about $73. So for just 7 subscription video on demand service, which are individually quite cheap, it adds up pretty quickly. For those of you who are familiar with the Amazon Streaming Partners program, where you can access a whole range of niche and mainstream subscription video on demand services, there are about 100 of those. If you were to take all of them, you'd have a monthly spend of somewhere in the region of about $400 to $450. Perhaps unrealistic. So what's going to happen? Well, this is where aggregators come in. Is there anyone who can potentially take control of this, manage that pricing, and bring it all into a bundle? So taking a quick example from Netflix. Netflix is increasingly integrating onto set-top boxes in North America and Europe and the rest of the world. So what we've looked at is, for those customers who are on an operator offering Netflix on their set-top box, are they more likely to be taking Netflix? And if we look at North America and Europe as a whole, those subscribers to these services are 6% more likely to be taking Netflix. If we exclude the US from the mix, because Netflix is so ubiquitous there already, in Europe, those providers that offer Netflix on the set-top box, their customers are 11% more likely to have Netflix. And you can see that in the UK, for instance. So if we take the various services of BT, Virgin, TalkTalk, Netflix is offered on the set-top boxes. They are 19%, their customers are 19% more likely to take Netflix than the average UK household. Sky, which doesn't, still is more, their customers are quite content hungry. They're 8% more likely to take Netflix than the average, but they're some way behind the other service providers. So there's certainly a role for aggregation in encouraging uptake of subscription video on demand inside the pay TV environment. So I'm just going to sum up with a few thoughts to finish before we hand over to our first speaker, and that is that the majority of Western internet users are already taking subscription video on demand with their pay TV services, and that's happening whether you like it or not, whether you've integrated SVOD or whether you've integrated OTT, it's happening. Subscription video on demand customers are stacking services, so they're adding additional subscription OTT products to their household mix, and that is also happening whether you like it or not. But price is going to be a key factor here. We looked at the price points that you might have to currently spend if you aggregated the various different services on your own at the moment as a consumer, and they're pretty exorbitant. Is that going to happen? It's probably unrealistic for it to continue indefinitely. So, and lastly, evidence suggests that integrating subscription video on demand onto set-top boxes works, encourages uptake. So we're hopefully going to hear a few first-hand examples of how that's been working on our panel later today. So I'm going to finish on that note, and I'm going to hand over to our first speaker.